Today we have to do Daf Yutes. So we're going to start at the bottom of Yud Ches Amud Beis.
What is it you said? Yud what?
Do Yud Ches. No, not Yud Ches. We're going to do Yud Tes Amud Beis, and we're going to do today Daf Chaf. Start with Maskefla. Let's see.
Maskif, you said, is on Yud Tes Amud Aleph, on base, you said, right?
Yeah. The second line from the bottom.
Okay. Yeah.
Rav said that by a korban mincha, if the pasuk restates the same halacha, it's ma'akiv. Maskefla Rav Huna.
If it says it, you said if it, what did Rav? You said Rav says if it says it twice,
then it's ma'akiv.
Right.
That means that that if you miss out that part of the service, it's invalid.
Correct.
Rav Huna asks the question. Maskefla Rav Huna. Rav Huna is the maskef is officially a strong question. Rav Huna is actually a student of Rav. So Maskefla Rav Huna, Harei Melach. What about salt? The loitana bekra uma'akva. Salt is put on sacrifices. It's put on the korban mincha as well. Not on. It's put on the kaimitz of the mincha. And the Torah doesn't repeat it. And nevertheless, it's ma'akiv. The Tanya, it's taught in a brisa, bris melech olam. It's an everlasting covenant with salt. Now, actually, that word bris melech olam, the word olam, according to Rabbi Tam, is not supposed to be there, because there is a pasuk that says bris melech olam, and that means it's a covenant. It's an everlasting covenant. It's like salt, which is preserving, and it's a covenant that's made to the Kayanim, and it has nothing to do with salt. Mm-hmm. It's an expression of something that lasts forever.
Because it preserves, because salt preserves. Okay.
Now, there is another pasuk that says bris melach, that says leisash bris melach. You should not leave the salt off the korban mincha. And Rabbi Tam says that's the pasuk that we're quoting. And we have nothing to do with that pasuk, because if we were referring to that pasuk as well, then we would have two psukim, and then what are we asking?
Where's this pasuk from?
Bris melach olam is in Bamidbar Yud Ches.
It's funny because Rabbi Tam would say it's not used in the context. It's taken out of its context.
And therefore, Rabbi Tam says that we're actually quoting a pasuk in Vayikra, and take out the word olam, because olam it doesn't say in Vayikra. Okay, so where does it say that you put on salt, and how is it that it only says it once, and where does it say that it's ma'akiv? We need all of those issues to have a good question here. So it says Titania was taught in a brisa, bris melach, who? Okay, shetehei bris amura b'melach, that there's a covenant that's made regarding salt. Divri Rabbi Yehuda. Those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Shimon Aimer. Reb Shimon says there's actually no machlaikas Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Shimon. They just where they learn it from. Reb Shimon says Nemer kan bris melach olam. Who? It says in one place bris melach olam. V'nemer lahalan, and it says in another place bris kuhunas olam, that it's a covenant with the kohanim. Yes. Kshem she'ef shel karbanos b'lei kuhuna. Just like you can't have sacrifices without a kohen. You also can't have sacrifice without salt. So is it bris melach olam, the bris melach that he's learning from the pasuk directly, or is he learning it from some sort of gzeir shava? Whatever the case is, obviously you need the salt there, or else it's not valid. How does Rav say that a pasuk that's not repeated is not ma'akiv? It needs to be repeated to be ma'akiv. Rav Yosef, Rav Ketana Didan Svirale, Rav Yosef says you don't have a problem, because there's a machlekes if salt is ma'akiv. We hold that salt is not ma'akiv, and it only says it once. Who says that salt is not ma'akiv? If you go back to our Mishnah, it says lo yatzak, lo bola, lo pasas, v'lo malach. It's all kosher. You didn't pour.
It's not ma'akiv, you're saying?
It's not ma'akiv. The whole there was an assumption that was made that created a question. The assumption was wrong.
Right.
Now the problem is when we said la yatzak, How did we interpret la yatzak? Not that you didn't pour. La yatzak, good morning. La yatzak was that the kayin didn't pour, but it's on page Yud.
Well, that's what it is, okay.
That the kayin didn't pour, but a non-kayin poured. And we said that was kosher. So if that's the way you interpret the Mishnah, that the kayin didn't do it, but someone else did it, then if we go back to melach, loy malach, what would it mean? That the kayin didn't do it, but someone else did it. That means that it still is ma'akiv. We said no. If you get what's happening here, I did 2 steps a little too fast. The first step was, Rav holds that melach is not ma'akiv. If you're missing melach, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look in the Gemara now. Rav Ketani Dunsvir Leidamar Le Malach is kosher. Okay. We're on page 20. A. And we're up to Amalei Abaya. It's about 6 lines down. Amalei Abaya. So Abaya tells to Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef was Abaya's teacher.
Rabbi Yosef was Rabbi Yosef.
Yeah. Yihachi, if so, if you're saying that Rav holds like the Tana of our Mishnah, and the Tana of our Mishnah holds that if you don't salt it, it's kosher, let's look at the Mishnah more carefully. Lo yatzak nami. The first phrase of the Mishnah, the first clause, was if he didn't pour the oil. What does that mean? Lo yatzak klal? That he didn't pour it at all? Elo lo yatzak kayin elazar. It doesn't mean that he didn't pour it at all. It means that the kayin didn't pour. A non-kayin poured it. And we said that was kosher. But what would be if he didn't pour it at all? It would be invalid. So hachanami. Le malach kayin elazar. A kayin didn't do the salting. Azar did the salting. We say it's valid. That would mean that if it wasn't done at all, it's invalid. That means that Rav holds. If it's not salted, it's not valid. That would mean that we have
Machlekes.
That would mean but the machlekes doesn't bother us. That would mean that we have a halacha of something that's ma'akiv, not salting, even though the pasuk wasn't repeated twice.
Right.
So Amar Le Rav Yosef responds back, how could you say that loy malach means that it wasn't salted by a kayin, it was salted by a non-kayin? The chisala al daitchash is our karav l'gabi mizbeach. Is it possible? Good morning. Is it possible that the expectations are very high here?
Rabbi, if you went to the wedding last night, are you potter? I'm sorry. I passed out, sorry. That's how I was able to get here. Anybody go to the wedding last night?
Yeah, I had a back to school thing.
Yeah.
Sort of a football.
Anyway, we're bringing right now.
What could it enter? Rav Yosef says, could it enter your mind that the non-kayin stranger is able to go up onto the altar to do the salting? The salting is done by at the altar. So by the pouring of the mincha, it doesn't say where you have to pour the zar can do it at the entranceway or wherever. But here, it's impossible for it to be a stranger. That can't be the pshat in the Mishnah. However you're going to translate la yatzak, fine, but la malach cannot mean la malach kayin elazar. That it wasn't a kayin that did the salting, it was a stranger that did it. It's impossible. It must mean la malach klal, that it wasn't salted at all. And therefore Rav holds that if it's not salted, it's still valid. And now we have no question on Rav, because the salt is not ma'akiv. It doesn't stop it from being a valid sacrifice if it's missing. And the reason for that is because the pasuk wasn't repeated. The Iba Yasema, if you want I could tell you, Kivan the Ksiva Bei Bris, because it says the word covenant by salt, Commanded Tana Beikra Damya, it's as if it was repeated. And therefore Rab holds that the salt is ma'akiv. He doesn't hold like our Mishnah. He holds that the salt, he would hold like Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, that the salt is ma'akiv. And we have a question, why is it ma'akiv? It wasn't repeated. You say, it says the word bris, that's good enough. Okay. Now the Gemara asks, you see, this is an interesting Gemara because there's a lot of assumptions that are being made. And then when we reassess are those assumptions, we re-examine those assumptions. Just 1 second. That's not necessarily the case. The Gemara now asks the most basic of the questions. V'leitana bekra, is the halacha of salt on the karbanos not repeated? V'haksiv, it is repeated. V'chol karban minchascha b'melach timlach. It says that all the mincha sacrifices are salted. Now, actually, what it says in that pasuk is it says it twice. The pasuk says, every karban mincha is salted. You shall not withhold salt from the covenant of Hashem, from on your mincha. All the karbanos you should bring salt. So it repeats it in the same pasuk. So the whole question here, how could Rav hold that salt is ma'akiv? Our original question.
Okay.
How could Rav hold that the salt is ma'akiv? The pasuk doesn't repeat it. The pasuk repeats it.
Oh.
So first we tried to say, how could Rav hold that salt is not ma'akiv?
So Rav is in line with the fact that everybody's in line with anything something repeats.
Then it's ma'akiv.
It's ma'akiv.
Right. So the first way of dealing with this was that how could Rav hold that salt is ma'akiv? The pasuk doesn't repeat it. We said Rav holds that salt is ma'akiv. Maybe Rav holds like the Mishnah that salt is not ma'akiv. Okay, possibility. Now we're taking the other question. How do you know who says the pasuk doesn't repeat it? Apparently the pasuk does repeat it. Okay. So the Gemara says, Sahumi Baile. That repetition is very, very necessary. It's so necessary, we're not going to consider it as a repetition. Look at the Tanya, as it's taught in a Brisa. Ilu nemar karban b'melach. If it would just say karban by the salt, that you have to put the salt on a karban. So shemei ani, I would understand from that, afilu eitzim v'dam, that you would have to salt the wood and you would have to salt the blood before it's sprinkled. Shenikru karban, because eitzim and dam are also called karban. On the next page, the Gemara is going to ask, where do you get that? Where do you see that? It's called the karban. However, the Brisa itself just goes on and says, Talmud Leimer Mincha. From the fact that it says Mincha, that teaches me that I don't need to salt wood and blood. I only have to salt the karban mincha, which is flour and oil and whatever. And ma mincha miyuchedes she'achirim ba'im chayvela. Just as the mincha is unique, that it has other things that are required to come along with it. As in order to perform the karban mincha, you need to have wood to burn the kaimetz. So because there's like this unstated requirement of other ingredients, of other materials that are needed to perform the karban mincha, which is the wood, so to anything else, afkal she'achirim ba'im chayvela, also anything else that has other materials that are needed for it to be performed would require salt. It's a little strange of a way of designating what needs salt. Anything that needs other materials. Why are you saying that that's the uniqueness of a mincha? In other words, we're going to make a comparison. That a mincha needs salt. Well, just like a mincha needs salt, so to anything else that's similar to a mincha will require salt. Well, what is similar to a mincha? We say, well, let's take a look at the mincha. Mincha needs other materials. So to anything else that needs other materials will require salt. So 1 second, that's not the only quality of a mincha. A mincha has a kaimetz. We're referring to the kaimetz specifically. The kaimetz is burnt, and it requires the wood. But it's also matir, the shirayim, to be eaten. It's a permitter. It allows the shirayim. So af kol shematir. Maybe I should say anything that's similar to a mincha and anything that's a permitter requires salt. Avidam. I'll bring along blood. That blood is also a permitter. Very similar to the mincha. It's a permitter. Shematir. That it's a permitter. And I should require salt on the blood. Talmud Laimar. pasuk says, "Me'al minchascha," you should not withhold salt from your karban mincha. V'loy me'al damcha. It doesn't say from on your blood; it says from on your mincha. So that's an exclusion that blood does not require salt. The Gemara now asks, "Yachal te," it's a brisa. "Yachal te mincha kula te'una melach." Maybe you should have to salt the entire mincha, not just the kaimetz. Maybe you should also salt the shirayim, because the pasuk says you should not withhold salt from your mincha. Maybe it's not referring to only the kaimetz. Maybe it's more inclusive. Talmud Leimar karban. It says karban minchascha. Well, it's pasuk in the beginning. It goes back to the beginning where it says karban. Karban tun melach. That means the kaimetz that's offered requires the salt. Ve'in mincha kula tun melach. And the mincha, which means the shirayim, does not require salt. Now the Gemara asks, "V'yein li ela kaimetz." How do you? I only know right now that a kaimetz requires salt. Minayin l'Rabbi sasalavayna. How do you know that you have to salt the frankincense? So mar ben yasalavayna shkein boima b'kli achad. That's not a problem. I'll include that because it comes in the same vessel. After you do the kaimetz, you put it into a vessel. In that vessel, you also put the levina.
But is it separate?
On the side.
Is it separate of the mincha, or is it? In other words, is the levina here in that case considered separate, or is it part of the mincha? So in other words, how are we?
Right. How are you categorizing it?
Correct. How are we categorizing it?
I'm not sure. There's a discussion about how connected the levina is.
In other words, independent.
Right. We had this discussion. There was a machlaikis if the levina. We had it about the thoughts of the if you had pigul thoughts by offering the levina, and
No, I'm just talking about the salt. In other words,
understand.
Yeah.
I understand, but the Gemara is assuming that you need to salt the levina as well. How do you know that? I said, well, it's put in the same pan as the mincha, in the same container as the kaimetz, so it's going to get salted just like it. The Gemara is actually going to ask, why do you need to say that because it's put in the same container? You already said that anything that requires wood, anything that has materials that are necessary for it, is similar to the mincha, and automatically requires salt. We said this. We made a comparison before. Why do you need to say, oh, because it's put in the same container? It's just not necessary. You already said, right? Okay. What about if someone offers levina on its own? How would you know that also requires salt? And what about the levina that's brought in the spoons which are on the table of the showbread, lechem apanim? What about the ketairis requires salt? Now, this point is going to be disputed later. Now, these don't have a kmitza that comes along with them. They're not put in the same container. What about minchas kayanim, minchas kayin mashiach? These don't have a kmitza either. Any sacrifice of a kayan is entirely burnt. You don't do kmitza. Minchas nesachim. What about the mincha that comes along with the sacrifice? There's no kmitza on that either. What about emurechatas, the limbs of a sin offering? Ve'imuri yashim, ve'imuri kachim, all of those limbs that are burnt. Ve'imuri kachim kalim, or if it's a secondary holiness. Ve'ivari oila, the limbs of an oila. More than the limbs of the oila, the entire oila is burnt. Va'oila sa'if, what about the bird oila? How do you know, minayin, that they need to be salted? Talmud Leimar al kol karbancha takriv melach. It says, on all sacrifices you should bring salt. What the Gemara just did was it said that you can't learn from the repetition of that you need salt on the karban mincha, because this entire pasuk is used to teach me all different types of sacrifices need salt.
The original basis for the mincha was going back to what we said before, if it says something twice, right?
It says here, it's not really saying it twice because it's so necessary for all these limudim.
So it's a exemption from that.
Right. It's necessary to say this if Rav holds that the salting is not ma'akiv. If the salting is ma'akiv, then we can say it different. We can just say that it says it twice, and it's ma'akiv. Okay, Amar Mar. The master said, that means that we're going back to discuss something that was mentioned in the Brisa. That's the way of, it would be quotations in English, in the Hebrew, or maybe old languages. How do they re-quote something without quotations? They would say Amar Mar, the master says. So that's what we teach the students.
Did you say this was like generic? Like when somebody before
Yeah.
says Amar Mar?
Yeah, it's just like a quotations, like quotation marks. So if you didn't have those symbols,
right,
quotation marks, you would have to write, this is, I am quoting. Right? You would have to spell it out. This is a quote. So that's what the Gemara does.
An unknown quote.
This is a quote from something that was said before.
Right.
Okay. Just like if you didn't have the question mark symbol, you would have to say, in question form. You would have to write it.
Yeah, right.
You would have to write like Rashi says, Bitmiya. Rashi has to tell us.
You don't know with that punctuation.
Right. Okay. So Amar Mar. Eily ala kaimetz. We only know that the kaimetz requires salting. Minayin l'Rabbi says salavayna. From where do you know that you have to salt the frankincense? The Brisa said, Marban Salavayna will include the frankincense into the laws of salting, because it comes in the same vessel as the kaimetz, as the scoop.
So that's the problem. We didn't have salt in the levona.
Yeah, maybe that's the issue.
You have to
Try it again.
I've noticed, I tried once to burn salt,
yeah,
and it makes like different color fire.
Yes.
Like you get like different shades of orange and blue.
It's the chemical of the natran. I don't know how to say it in English. Whatever. It's when it
Interesting.
is giving colors.
V'ha Amrit, the Gemara asks, why do you need to tell me that the reason why the Levina requires salt is because it's put in the same container? V'ha Amrit, ma mincha miyuchedes shachir ba'chayvela, just as the mincha is unique, that it requires other materials, which means wood. The Levina also requires wood. It's burnt. You have to. It's burnt on wood. Hachi kamar. Maybe we're missing the wood.
What does that mean? What's special about the mincha that it has other things? Other things also have other things that.
Right. But that's what we were doing. We were saying that we're going to make a comparison from mincha. Anything that's similar to the mincha will require salt. Well, we said, well, what is a mincha? We said, well, a mincha requires other materials. So we said, well, anything else that requires other materials.
Okay.
So now the Gemara is asking, so why do you have to ask? So what about levina? And then you give an answer that levina is put in the same container. You don't need that. It requires other materials. It requires wood. The Gemara says hachi kamar. What the Brisa was really asking was something much deeper. Ema karban klal. Maybe the whole limud has to be rearranged, and we're going to view it like this. The beginning of the pasuk says karban. That's a very general rule that you have to put salt on a karban. Mincha. Then the next word is mincha. That's a prat. That's a detail, and we have a rule. Klalu prat. Whenever it says a general rule, and then it gives me the detail. It's not a general rule, a generality. And then it gives me a detail. Ein bichlal ala masher befrat. We've just limited the generality to that specific detail.
So
mincha in midiachrin aloi, which would tell me only a mincha and nothing else. Hadar amar, then the pasuk returns, and it says, I'll call karbancha, on all of your sacrifices. That sacrifices is a generality. Chazaru klal. What am I left with? Klalu pratu klal. Now I have a generality, a detail, and then another generality. And the way that works is iyatadan elakena prat. Now I compare, I can include in this anything that has a similarity to the detail. Mahaprat mefurish shachirim ba'am lachayva. Just as the detail has other things that come, other materials that come along as a requirement. Afkol shachirim ba'am chayva. Anything else that has materials that come along with it will be included. So when the Gemara was saying, Eily ala kaimetz, I only know the kaimetz. How do you know other things? What that was saying was that you just did a klal uprat. How do you know that you can include other things as well? So we said, no, I'll call karbancha. How do we know that you can include the bezichan and the levina that comes out of the minchas kain and all of those things? Because it's a klal uprat to klal. So in other words, the Gemara asked, why do I need the end of the pasuk to teach me other things that are not the mincha, that they are required to be salted? Why do I need that? They're similar to the mincha. They need wood. And therefore I don't need the end of the pasuk. I have the beginning of the brisa that said anything that needs wood is similar to the mincha, and it needs to be salted. The Gemara answers. It says like this, that the end of the pasuk that tells me that it needs wood, the end of the pasuk that tells me that there's an inclusion here, that other things need to be salted other than the mincha, is actually telling me that it's a klal uprat klal, and now I could compare it to a mincha, because the detail was the mincha. Klal uprat klal works that I can include other things that are similar to the detail, and that is exactly what the Gemara is doing. That if I have a similarity to the detail, just as the detail requires wood, so too all of those things require wood. So the Gemara answers it by saying, that's exactly what we're saying. The end of the brisa that says that there's a pasuk that teaches that to me is only telling me exactly what the brisa was saying the whole time. Who says that you can do a comparison here to a mincha? Well, let me tell you the end of the pasuk. That's a klal. That leaves me with a klal uprat klal, and now you can do the comparison. We were
as
asking,
long as there's a klal at the end.
Yeah, we were asking, why do you need the end of the pasuk? Just do the comparison. The Gemara is saying, no, I can't do a comparison unless I have a klal uprat klal. The end of the pasuk tells me of the klal, so now I can do the comparison.
So if you just have a klal of prat, then you have to limit it to the prat.
Yeah, to limit it to the prat. Okay. So what does it mean, acherim debaim chayvala, that the others, it requires other materials? My new eitzim, it requires wood. So afkol eitzim, anything that requires wood. Ema acherim debaim lachayva neo lavaina, maybe it requires frankincense, the mincha, to come along with it. And if I'm going to do things like that, then I'm going to say anything that has any other requirements will also be included. For example, va'isi dam de'ik nesachim, I'll bring along that blood also has other requirements. For example, what's brought along with the blood? There's wine and oil that is brought along with the sacrifice. It comes along with the blood. Therefore, I should need to salt blood because it has other materials that are necessary. Gemara says no. Nesachim b'hadei murim hudasu. The nesachim, they come along with the limbs of the animal, not the blood. As you bring these other ingredients along with the karban, but what are they coming along with? Are they coming along with the blood, the sprinkling, or are they coming along with the burning of the sacrifice? It says they're coming along with the burning of the sacrifice, with the limbs of the sacrifice. My taima, how do you know? Achilu shtia, because it's food. This is wine and oil. That's the meat. It's not blood. The Gemara says Adarab. No, on the contrary, kapara v'simcha. They come along with the blood because it's part of the atonement. Is also the rejoicing, and the pasuk says that when they poured the wine, they would sing, and that was praises to God, and that was the rejoicing, a happiness. And what's the happiness? It comes from the atonement. So it comes along, those libation, those wine and the oil, that comes along because of the blood. Rather, why do I bring along the levina? Not because the levina requires wood, but specifically, why don't I bring along other things that will have other requirements other than wood? I say no, the levina comes along because it comes in the same vessel. However, nesachim ein ba'im b'kli echad. But the nesachim don't come in the same vessel. They don't come in the same vessel as the blood. Aval eitzim. But when it comes to wood, ki heichedim iskasher bu mincha, just like they make a mincha valid, achim iskasher buhu kula karbanos. So too they make valid all other sacrifices, and therefore, when it comes to the other sacrifices, the fact that it comes along with wood is good enough. The levina, that's because it comes in the same vessel. Why do I'm still it's unclear.
Eitzim are matir?
Why do I need that? It has wood. I have to burn the levina.
Can you say that eitzim are matir? No.
No, they're not a matir. They're a material that's necessary.
How you burn it? You have to have etzi.
Okay.
You have to have
flammable.
Okay. You have to have flammable material to burn it. But the salt, I don't want to say something about the salt. When you have a basar tari, fresh shecht, you don't have to salt it. You can put it on the fire. It's in kasher to eat it, correct or not?
It's a kashrus issue.
You can roast it.
You can roast it. Yeah, put it on the fire, roast it.
You do. We still put a drop of salt, but yes, it doesn't need to be the din
Same
of salt.
thing here. Why we have to put salt on the top of the mincha?
Oh.
What is the importance of the salt to put on top of mincha? If the salt is like for concept of brit olam, or b'chinat kasher to take the blood out.
No,
Blood
it's
out
a
is
special
not.
covenant that the salt felt bad because it got separated from the waters. Remember the waters
Yes.
that separated.
I
So
was
God,
at the time over there.
so God said before the
Brit
pinch,
olam. Yes.
so God said.
That's when we have mustache to cover
Right.
the
So God said, no, we're going to appease the waters by bringing salt on
Salt.
it, right? So it doesn't have to do with kashrus.
nice enough. Okay.
Okay, I'm unclear in one point over here. Why do I need the levina is in one vessel? The wood should be enough for that. Maybe I don't know. Okay. Let's see.
Bring salt. You have to bring the sea salt. The one that is.
The Gemara now asks, the Ema, let's say one more detail here. We said that anything that's similar to the mincha could be learnt along because it's a klal prat to klal. Well, what is a mincha? What is that? Well, it has materials that are necessary to come along with it. He said, but 1 second, there's other things that are required for a mincha. The Ema ma'aprat mafur shachem ba'al lachayva umateres.